Jack Malone ruled Liverpool's streets with an iron fist, but it was the betrayal of those closest to him that shattered his empire. In a city gripped by fear and violence, his rise from a tough neighborhood to cocaine kingpin seemed unstoppable, until the very people he trusted turned against him. This is the story of power, loyalty and bloodshed that brought down Liverpool's most feared drug lord. Liverpool's docks have long been a symbol of the city's connection to the wider world, a place where ships arrive and depart, bringing with them goods, people and sometimes secrets. In the early 2000s, these same docks became the backdrop for a story of ambition, danger and power that few outside the city could have predicted. At the heart of this story was a man named Jack Malone, a figure who would come to dominate Liverpool's dark underworld and earn a fearsome reputation as the city's cocaine kingpin. Jack grew up in one of Liverpool's tougher neighborhoods, a place where opportunities were scarce and violence was often the only way to survive. From an early age, he learned how to navigate a world filled with danger, using his quick mind and natural charm to get ahead. But Jack was different from others who just got by. He wanted more. He wanted power, wealth and control. And he was willing to do whatever it took to get it. The turning point for Jack came when he realized that the city's docks, long the gateway for legitimate trade, were also a perfect way to smuggle drugs into the country. Using his knowledge of the docks and connections with some of the workers there, he began organizing shipments of cocaine, bringing in larger and larger quantities. His network expanded quickly, and with every successful deal, his reputation grew. He was smart and cautious, making sure to avoid the attention of the police while building a loyal crew around him. By the time Jack was in his late 20s, he had become nearly untouchable. His cocaine was known for its purity, and dealers across Liverpool knew that if they wanted the best product, they had to go through him. His empire stretched beyond the docks and into the streets, and even though violence often followed his deals, he managed to maintain control with a mixture of fear and respect. But the very factors that made Jack so powerful, his ambition, his ruthlessness, and his growing circle of allies, also planted the seeds of his eventual downfall. As his empire grew, so did the dangers, both from outside forces looking to take him down, and from the people closest to him. The story of Jack Malone is not just one of crime and violence, but also of betrayal, trust broken, and the high price of power. Jack Malone's rise to power was built on more than just smuggling cocaine through Liverpool's docks. It was a carefully crafted network that spread through every corner of the city. What made his operation so successful was the way he controlled every step of the process, from the moment the drugs arrived on the ships to the moment they reached the streets. It wasn't just about moving cocaine, it was about creating a system that was nearly impossible to break. At the center of this system were the people Jack trusted to run his business. Dock workers who turned a blind eye or helped unload shipments, drivers who transported the drugs to secret locations, and dealers who sold the cocaine in neighborhoods across Liverpool. All of them played a role, but Jack was more than just a boss giving orders. He was a master at managing relationships, knowing who to reward and who to punish. Loyalty was bought with cash, favors and sometimes fear. Jack's cocaine was known for its purity, a quality that made him stand out among other dealers. Customers trusted his product because it was consistent and powerful. This gave him a major advantage over rival gangs, who struggled to match his quality. His prices were competitive, and the sheer volume of drugs moving through his network made him incredibly rich. But wealth was never Jack's only goal. Control was just as important. Every corner of Liverpool's cocaine trade was tied to him in some way, and anyone who tried to operate without his permission quickly found themselves in danger. The violence that surrounded Jack's empire was brutal and often sudden. Enemies who crossed him disappeared, rival dealers were attacked, and the streets became a battleground. Yet, Jack always managed to keep a step ahead of the law. Corruption played a role too. Some local officials and police officers were either too afraid or too tempted to interfere. This allowed Jack's network to operate with a dangerous level of impunity. Still, the larger the network grew, the harder it became to keep control. The very people who helped Jack build his empire started to eye their own chances for power. Outside threats loomed as well. Rival gangs wanted a share of the profits, and law enforcement began to focus more attention on Liverpool's drug trade. The web of cocaine, money, and violence that Jack had spun was both his greatest strength and his greatest vulnerability. In the dangerous world Jack Malone had created, trust was rare, and betrayal always close behind. His inner circle was made up of men and women who seemed loyal, but beneath the surface, many were driven by their own ambitions and fears. Jack knew that keeping his empire intact required constant vigilance, but even he could not predict how quickly loyalty could turn to treachery. The foundation of Jack's power was built on relationships, alliances with his closest lieutenants who managed key parts of the operation. These trusted individuals handled everything from overseeing shipments to controlling street-level sales. For years they followed Jack's lead without question, sharing the profits and the risks. But cracks began to form when a new player entered Liverpool's underworld. A rival, hungry for power and money, saw opportunity to challenge Jack's dominance. This newcomer was clever and ruthless, slowly making moves to weaken Jack's control. Tensions grew within Jack's own group as whispers of betrayal spread. Some members, tempted by the rival's promises or simply frustrated by Jack's strict control, started questioning their loyalties. The fear of being left out of future deals or punished for mistakes led to paranoia and suspicion. Even those who remained outwardly loyal found themselves watching their backs, unsure of who could be trusted. One of Jack's closest allies made the first move. Quietly, without warning, this person began passing information to the rival gang. This act of betrayal sent shockwaves through the organization, causing chaos and confusion. Jack's empire, once a tightly controlled machine, suddenly seemed fragile and vulnerable. Plans were leaked, shipments were intercepted, and alliances shifted rapidly. At the same time, Jack was dealing with growing pressure from law enforcement, who had started to close in. The rival gang's challenge only made things worse, forcing Jack to split his focus between fighting off enemies outside and rooting out traitors within. Every decision became a risk, and every misstep could mean the end. The story of Jack Malone's downfall was not just about outside forces attacking his empire. It was about how betrayal from those closest to him shattered the trust that had held everything together. In the dangerous world of drugs and power, loyalty was a rare and valuable commodity, and Jack was about to learn just how costly its absence could be. While Jack Malone was busy managing rival gangs and dealing with internal betrayals, a hidden threat was growing closer every day. Law enforcement had managed to place an undercover officer inside his operation. This officer was unlike any ordinary cop. They were skilled at blending in, patient and relentless in their mission to bring down the cocaine kingpin. Slowly but surely, the officer earned the trust of Jack's crew, slipping deeper into the dangerous world of smuggling and street deals without raising suspicion. The undercover agent had to live a double life, navigating the constant fear of being discovered while collecting vital information. Every meeting they attended, every shipment they witnessed, became a piece of the puzzle law enforcement needed to build their case. They observed the inner workings of Jack's network, from the logistics at the docks to the violent enforcement on the streets. This first-hand insight gave police a rare and valuable advantage in understanding just how vast and well-organized Jack's empire truly was. As the weeks turned into months, the tension within Jack's organization grew. The rival gang's pressure, combined with betrayals inside the crew, made everyone nervous and more suspicious. Yet, the undercover officer's presence went unnoticed, allowing the police to listen in on conversations, record transactions, and identify key players who were otherwise hidden from view. This kind of inside information was crucial because Jack was careful to avoid electronic communication and rarely left paper trails. The undercover operation was risky. One wrong move could blow the agent's cover and put their life in danger. But the agent's ability to stay calm under pressure and build relationships with Jack's lieutenants was key to the investigation's success. With every passing day, the evidence against Jack and his network grew stronger, tightening the noose around the Kingpin. Unaware of the spy in his midst, Jack continued his efforts to maintain control and fend off enemies. But behind the scenes, law enforcement was preparing to strike, armed with the knowledge gathered from their secret insider. The balance of power was shifting, and the walls were closing in on Liverpool's cocaine kingpin, though Jack had no idea just how close the end really was. Violence had always been a shadow hanging over Jack Malone's empire, but by this point, it had escalated into something far more dangerous and uncontrollable. The streets of Liverpool, once merely a backdrop for deals and smuggling, had become a battleground. Rival gangs, emboldened by Jack's growing troubles, seized the chance to fight for control over territories and profits. The quiet fear that had kept the city's underworld in check was replaced by open aggression and bloody confrontations. Gunfire echoed through neighborhoods, and innocent people found themselves caught in the crossfire. Shops were burned, cars torched, and lives destroyed as the fight for dominance. But the fact that it came from someone who knew Jack better than anyone else, the inner workings of the cocaine network, once a closely guarded secret, suddenly became exposed to law enforcement. As arrests followed, the trust inside the organization fell apart. Those who remained loyal grew suspicious of everyone around them, unsure who might be the next to turn. Paranoia spread like wildfire, turning friends into enemies and allies into threats. Jack found himself isolated, no longer able to rely on the people who had helped him build his empire. Every conversation was laced with doubt, every meeting a potential trap. The police capitalized on this chaos, using the insider's information to strike swiftly and decisively. Key figures in Jack's operation were taken into custody, shipments were intercepted, and safe houses were raided. The once vast cocaine network began to unravel piece by piece. Jack's control slipped away as the pressure from both the police and rival gangs mounted. In this dangerous game of power and survival, loyalty had proven to be the most fragile currency of all. The betrayal from within was not just a personal blow to Jack. It was the beginning of the end for his reign. The empire he had built with so much cunning and violence was now being dismantled from the inside, and there was little he could do to stop it. The fall of Liverpool's cocaine kingpin had entered its most critical phase. With the betrayal from within and the undercover officer feeding them vital information, law enforcement was finally ready to act. They launched a carefully planned sting operation aimed directly at Jack Malone and the remaining core of his cocaine empire. Months of surveillance, wiretaps and undercover work had given the police the evidence they needed to make their move. The operation was designed to catch Jack in the act, to bring down not just the man but the entire network that had terrorized Liverpool for years. The plan focused on a large shipment of cocaine scheduled to arrive at a warehouse near the docks. This warehouse had become a critical hub for Jack's operations, a place where drugs were stored, packaged, and distributed across the city. Police officers moved in quietly, setting up hidden cameras and waiting for the right moment to strike. Every detail had been meticulously mapped out, from entry points to escape routes. As the shipment arrived, Jack's men began unloading crates, unaware that their every move was being watched. The tension in the air was thick, but the gang remained confident, convinced that their empire was still untouchable. However, behind the scenes, the police were preparing to close the trap. When the moment came, officers stormed the warehouse, catching many of Jack's lieutenants off guard. The raid was swift and decisive. Guns drawn, arrests made, evidence seized. The sting didn't just stop at the warehouse. Simultaneous raids were carried out across Liverpool, targeting safe houses, vehicles, and hidden caches of cocaine. The coordinated effort stunned the criminal network, fracturing it beyond repair. Jack Malone himself was nowhere to be found during the initial raids, but the pressure was mounting. His options were shrinking, and the net around him was tightening. This sting operation was a turning point. It marked the shift from an untouchable kingpin running a sprawling empire to a desperate man fighting to hold on to what little power remained. The city watched as the police delivered a major blow to the cocaine trade, proving that even the most carefully built empires could fall when law enforcement and betrayal worked hand in hand. The fall of Jack Malone had truly begun. The trial of Jack Malone was one of the most closely watched criminal cases in Liverpool's history. After months on the run, Jack was finally captured and brought to court, facing charges that ranged from drug trafficking and money laundering to conspiracy and violent crimes. The courtroom became a battleground where the city's dark underworld was exposed in full view of the public. From the very start, the evidence against Jack was overwhelming. Law enforcement presented detailed accounts gathered from undercover agents, wiretaps, and surveillance footage. Testimonies from former allies who had turned informants painted a picture of a ruthless kingpin who ruled with an iron fist. These witnesses described the fear and violence that defined Jack's reign, revealing how he maintained control through intimidation and betrayal. The prosecution focused not just on Jack's crimes, but on the larger system that allowed him to operate. They showed how corruption had seeped into parts of the city, with some officials turning a blind eye or even benefiting from the drug trade. The trial exposed the depths of the cocaine network and the devastating impact it had on communities across Liverpool. Despite the weight of the evidence, Jack's defense team fought hard to discredit witnesses and challenge the police investigation. They argued that some testimonies were motivated by revenge or greed, and tried to create doubt about the undercover operation's legitimacy. Yet, the jury was faced with an undeniable trail of proof, linking Jack to the drugs and violence that had plagued the city. As the trial unfolded, public interest grew. People followed every twist and turn, eager to see if the man who had seemed untouchable for so long would finally be held accountable. The courtroom drama revealed the human cost behind the headlines: families torn apart by addiction, neighborhoods scarred by violence, and a city desperate for justice. In the end, the jury found Jack Malone guilty on multiple counts. The verdict sent a clear message: no one, not even the most powerful kingpin, was above the law. The trial closed a dark chapter in Liverpool's history, but also opened new questions about how the city could heal and prevent such a rise in crime from happening again. Jack Malone's conviction marked a dramatic turning point, but it did not bring the peace many had hoped for. Instead, his downfall left a dangerous vacuum in Liverpool's underworld. With the kingpin behind bars, rival gangs scrambled to claim pieces of the shattered empire, igniting a new wave of conflict and revenge that further destabilized the city's streets. The power struggles that followed were brutal and chaotic. Without Jack's iron grip to control them, former lieutenants and ambitious criminals saw an opportunity to rise. Alliances quickly shifted as old friends became bitter enemies, each vying for dominance over the lucrative cocaine trade. The violence that had once been somewhat contained under Jack's reign spiraled out of control, with drive-by shootings, turf wars, and retaliations becoming a grim routine. These conflicts extended beyond just gangs. Innocent bystanders were caught in the crossfire, and entire neighborhoods suffered from the fallout. The sense of fear and uncertainty that gripped Liverpool deepened, as families watched their streets become battlegrounds once again. Community leaders and residents called for stronger action from authorities, desperate to restore safety to their homes. Meanwhile, some former members of Jack's network attempted to rebuild their lives outside the drug trade, but many found it impossible to escape the violence and loyalty tests that came with the territory. The legacy of Jack Malone's empire lingered, a shadow that haunted both those inside and outside the criminal world. For some, the fall of the kingpin was only the beginning of a much longer and more complicated struggle. Law enforcement continued their efforts to clamp down on the gangs, using the lessons learned from Jack's case to pursue more coordinated and aggressive approaches. However, the constant reshuffling of power made it difficult to completely eradicate the drug trade. Liverpool's battle with drugs and violence was far from over. Jack Malone's story became a warning about the cost of unchecked ambition, and the dangers of a world where loyalty can quickly turn to betrayal. His empire's collapse showed that while one man's reign could end, the cycle of crime, revenge, and violence often continues, leaving lasting scars on the city and its people. Years after Jack Malone's fall, Liverpool still carries the weight of his reign and its violent aftermath. The city's streets have slowly healed, but the scars left behind remain visible in broken communities, ongoing struggles with addiction, and the memories of a time when fear ruled the night. Jack's story has become more than just a tale of crime. It is a reminder of how power, betrayal, and violence can shape a city's destiny. The empire Jack built may have crumbled, but its impact lingers. The cocaine trade did not disappear with his arrest. Instead, it fractured into smaller, less organized groups. These new players lacked Jack's vision and control, which sometimes leads to more reckless violence and instability. While law enforcement has adapted and strengthened its efforts, the cycle of crime continues to challenge the city's safety and well-being. Liverpool's communities, however, have shown resilience. Local organizations, charities, and leaders have worked tirelessly to rebuild neighborhoods and support those affected by drugs and crime. Education and prevention programs have been established to help keep young people away from the dangerous path that once led so many into Jack's world. The city is slowly reclaiming its identity beyond the shadow of the cocaine kingpin. Jack Malone's fall also sparked important conversations about corruption and accountability. The trial revealed how some institutions failed to protect the city, leading to reforms and increased oversight. These changes have aimed to prevent future criminals from exploiting weaknesses in the system, though challenges remain. Ultimately, the story of Jack Malone is a cautionary tale about the high price of ambition and the fragile nature of trust in a world ruled by fear. His rise and fall show how power can corrupt, how loyalty can be broken, and how violence can devastate a community. Yet, it also highlights the strength of a city determined to heal and move forward. Though Liverpool still battles the shadows left by Jack Malone, it stands as a city that refuses to be defined by its darkest moments. The legacy of blood on the Mersey is a warning and a call for vigilance, justice, and hope.